Typically, when a comic book series, graphic novel, or book comes to an end, they have a solid conclusion. The characters and their storyline are all tied up in a nice, neat package, and the fans can go on to read something else. But every so often, other endings are written, but never used. These comic books with alternate endings, or endings that were never illustrated, tend to live in a world of rumour before being confirmed, and often, the fans can't help but wonder if a series would have had a better end had the creators stuck with their original plan. At the very least, it would be interesting. With that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 8 comics that almost had better endings. 8. Batman: A Death in the Family. One of the most impactful comic book stories to tear down Batman's world was 1989's Batman: A Death in the Family. This comic told the tale of Jason Todd's quest to find his birth mother after Batman relieved him of his job as Robin. While on this quest, he's kidnapped by the Joker, who tortures and murders the Boy Wonder. When the books were published, they came with 2 900 numbers, and fans could call in to vote on Todd's fate in the next issue. One number would give a vote for Jason Todd's survival, while the other would end in his death. The ending came with Batman holding the beaten and battered corpse of Jason Todd, but due to the fact that the vote could have gone either way, an alternate ending was also created. It is doubtless that many fans would have been much happier with the outcome where Todd survives, but also others wouldn't, so whether or not it's for better or worse is different for every reader. 7. Dragon Ball. The original Dragon Ball series was written and illustrated by Akira Toriyama from 1984 until 1995 in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump. By the time Toriyama concluded the series, it had been told in 519 individual chapters, which meant in short that it was long. While the ending wasn't bad, there were a number of fans who felt that it was rushed and didn't close up some of the characters in a way they would have liked. Fortunately, Toriyama wrote a second ending, but the world didn't find out about it until the 2000s. With the release of Dragon Ball Kanzaban. The ending was altered for the Kanzaban to include the original narrative Toriyama wrote nearly a decade before, but with some tweaks. In the new ending, Goku passes the torch to Oob, which he did originally, but the new ending also passed over the Nimbus Cloud. This was a callback to Goku's origin when he was a child, and it tied the series together perfectly. 6. The Dark Phoenix Saga. One of the biggest and most impactful events to sweep across the Marvel Universe was the Dark Phoenix Saga. In it, Jean Grey is overtaken by the Phoenix Force, and her powers exponentially increase to the levels of a god. In the end, she sacrificed her own life to remove the threat that she had become, and that ending proved controversial, as it removed Jean Grey from the X-Men books. For a while, anyway. However, the original ending was much different than the one that was ultimately published in X-Men 137. Originally, the X-Men were all defeated and taken aboard a Shi'ar vessel. While there, Jean was subjected to a machine that removed her powers, and once it was finished, she and the rest of the X-Men were permitted to leave. It does admittedly sound a bit less impactful, but consider this. Killing Jean Grey created the first true event in comics history, and seeing as publishers have been trying to one-up the Death of Phoenix storyline for ever, it would probably have been better for everyone had she just been permitted to live. 5. The Walking Dead. Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead was one of the most successful independent comics ever published, and with the books came a franchise worth millions. While the comics and the television series veered off from one another as AMC's The Walking Dead continued, the books came to an abrupt ending with issue 193. Not only was this a weird number to conclude a decade-spanning series like The Walking Dead, but it was also a complete and total surprise to everybody. To be clear, Kirkman brought the book to a natural conclusion in the way he wanted to, so there wasn't another ending he was planning to use but didn't, but the big deal comes when he didn't only fool his fans, but he fooled comic book stores. While there was no alternate ending scripted, Kirkman had several fake covers drawn up for issues 194 through 196, despite the fact that they were never coming out. From those covers, a reader could take away what the narrative might have been, so in a fashion there was an alternate ending to The Walking Dead, and seeing as a lot of fans were not happy with the way the books ended, many would argue that the extension towards issue 200 would have been preferred. 4. New Gods. Jack Kirby's New Gods series is arguably one of the King's greatest works for DC. Unfortunately, the series was ahead of its time, and as a result, it didn't find a wide audience upon release. As a result, DC cancelled it after just 11 issues. The early cancellation meant that Kirby was unable to give the series the ending he originally planned, and honestly, any ending would have been better than the one fans got in 1972. Kirby's original plan was to upend and destroy the fourth world he created. The New Gods were meant to die, which would have fulfilled the Darkseid Orion prophecy, which sounds like it would have been a brilliant end to a book way ahead of its time. 3. The Clone Saga. One of the most hated events in Spider-Man history came in the Clone Saga, which ran from October 1994 until December 1996. There were aspects of the storyline that were ingenious, and they called back to stories from the early 70s, but in the end, it was a hot mess. The story became confusing and with too many changes, which indicated that Spidey wasn't the real Spider-Man, but instead a clone. That did end up being changed at the end, and Spider-Man fans were just happy to get back to normal, but it didn't have to be this way. Originally, the Clone Saga was meant to run the course of just a year and would serve to replace Peter Parker with Ben Reilly. This was met with a lot of controversy, but it would have created a story arc with a beginning, middle, and ending. Instead, the Clone Saga dragged on for bloody ages, becoming a confusing and complex nightmare for fans. 2. Crisis on Infinite Earths. One of the biggest events to hit the DC universe was 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths. The story was created by Marv Wolfman, who felt that the universe needed some tweaking, as its multiverse and broken continuity over the past 50 years made it confusing and difficult to follow. Wolfman's pitch was taken almost exactly as he hoped, but in the end, the editors forced him to use a completely different ending. Originally, Wolfman had wanted to end Crisis with the rebirth of the Earth. This would then be followed by the character's rebirth as well. He wanted the books to restart at issue 1, and then he and other creators working for DC at the time would restart everything. However, DC just didn't go for it, and instead we wound up with the pseudo-reboot that we all know and frankly quite like, even though a broader restructuring might have helped clear things up even more. 1. Laika. In 2007, Nick Abadzis published his graphic novel, Laika, about the stray dog who became the first mammal to reach space via the Soviet Union's space program. Parts of the story are told from the dog's perspective, and the story follows the real-life events surrounding Laika's trek into space. That's sad, because while Laika was the first mammal to leave the planet's atmosphere, she was also the first mammal to die in space. The graphic novel manages to tell Laika's story, but its evocative imagery left many readers saddened by what happened to her. Fortunately, Abadzis was paying attention, and in an effort to quell his readers' sadness, he created a series of alternate endings to his book, which were arguably much happier than the one he originally told. In the alternate endings, Laika parachutes to Earth and survives. She's adopted by a loving family and is recognized as a national hero. She plays out the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and she becomes a superhero following exposure to cosmic rays. Now that's the kind of ending Laika deserves. Good girl. And there you have it, folks, 8 comics that almost had better endings. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at YouSlyDowU. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.